Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta coming to you before now Game 5 after the Wild, like a random Tuesday in March, came out last night and absolutely no-showed in a 5-2 loss to the Colorado Avalanche at home. Anthony, I think you and I, we talked before the game. We both expected a much better Colorado team that Minnesota would have to match that. And, last night they did not look like a true contender. They absolutely looked tired, lethargic, and didn't come close to playing at the level that they did in Game 3. And amazingly, they were still in that game in the third period. But two horrendous shifts by both the second line and second D pair and fourth line and third D pair pretty much did them in.
Yeah, I mean, I expected a much better effort from Colorado. I thought it was going to be a tight, low-scoring game. When we talked in the dining room before the game, that was what I really felt was going to happen in the game, and I thought a big part of it was going to be that Colorado was going to bring a much better effort than they brought in Game 3. And I didn't really think the Wild were lacking effort early. They just were lacking execution. And then I think Colorado took advantage, and I guess for lack of a better cliched term, I would say they just kind of flexed their muscle where they dictated the game. They were in the offensive zone throughout the first 40 minutes, well, probably 35 minutes. It was about 4 or 5 minutes left in the second before the Wild seemed to find their game, but it was 1-1 after 2. It was 2-2 halfway through the third, and the Wild in the third period played well. But I just think it was indicative of two things. One, just how good Colorado is. This was the best team in the NHL, and they looked like it last night. That there's a specific style the Wild have to play. We saw that in Game 3. We didn't see it in Games 1, 2, or 4. Despite effort, they just didn't play the game the way that they played it in Game 3. And just how small that margin for error is when you're facing a team like Colorado with that much skill. And Colorado showed it last night. They were just the better team, particularly in the first 40 minutes of the game. And it was too much for Minnesota to overcome.
What was disappointing is that they loaded up their top line, and that wasn't the line that did the Wild in. They were allowing Ross Colton and Parker Kelly and these guys to run, rampant over them. The Wild's top two lines got absolutely destroyed in the game. I mean, beyond belief, analytics. And their number one power play, once again, I mean, like at some point you have to just dump the puck and go to work, but they don't want to go to work. Like that number one unit does not want to go chip pucks in and go get it. And it doesn't matter. Like Matt Boldy could skate it in and skate it in and skate it in and turn it over and turn it over and turn it over. And it doesn't stop him from doing it again and again and again. And sometimes when it works, but at some point you have to be willing to dump the puck. And they just didn't do that. And those power plays turned the momentum, and they made it a 50-50 game. Then Trenyon takes his latest dumb penalty in the series, and they score right away to tie the game up. What's a shame about it is the third period. It really is a shame that just Quinn Hughes can't play 60 minutes because he played 34 minutes, and then the two shifts that he leaves the ice, they turn pucks over on just soft plays by left shot defensemen, and it costs them the game. Like the shifts after goals are huge, and the Wild just. They had 3 shifts after Nico Sturm scored, and they were terrible on all 3.
Well, I agree with that. There are huge shifts right after goals because you have a chance to. Sturm's goal felt like it had a chance to reignite the building. And the atmosphere had been good in there. It went silent when Colorado took the lead, but when Sturm scored to tie it, it all of a sudden exploded again. And the next couple shifts were the key. If they get through those next couple shifts where you knew Colorado was going to push again, and they couldn't do it. And, the power play it's hard to really blame the power play too much because they did score on the power play in the first period, and that was the only reason they were ahead 1-0 because they got nothing done.
Yeah, their number 2 unit because their number 1 power play unit didn't have a shot in the first minor.
Right, and it was, so the power play did come through there. I just, Colorado's a good penalty killing team too. That's something that can't be overlooked. I think a lot of times in series and in matchups, it's sometimes easy to look at the team that you're watching. And, even though neither one of us have anything to do with whether or not the Wild win or lose each night, we're looking at these games from the Wild perspective because that's the team we watch every night. And so you always have a tendency to look at your own team. And when you lose a game, you say, well, here was the flaw. This is what was wrong. This is what was wrong. Sometimes it was just the other team was better. And I think that was a big part of this last night. Yes, there were things Minnesota could have done better, could have done differently, could have done more efficiently. But remember we talked in Game 3 about the things that the Wild had go right early in the game. They had the great atmosphere. They took advantage. They got big saves from Wallstedt, and they carried that. They started with a big physical approach. Well, they did all those things last night, too. Wallstedt made a couple big saves early. Particularly the Foligno line came out fast and physical again. But the difference was that Colorado all of a sudden started to play like we've seen Colorado play when they're on their game. They were in the offensive zone, and they weren't just turning pucks over. They weren't like they did in Game 3. They were now hanging on to the puck. And, I think at the end of the first period, the expected goals were like 86% for Colorado, and it was 90% at 5-on-5. And yet Minnesota was ahead 1-0 because they had cashed in on the power play, and Wallstedt had been great. And they got a kill, if I remember right, in the first period that was key. So they did all those same things. The difference was Colorado was just on top of their game. And I thought McKinnon looked like a guy who was possessed last night. He looked like a guy who was going to will his team to win a game. And I know he wasn't a big part of the scoring until late in the empty net situations, but he just felt different last night. And that line was about 85% in expected goals.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is that the Wild, it's like they put everything into Game 3 and just thought then they can just come out in Game 4. Like, I don't disagree with you that Colorado was better and they showed that why they're a true contender. But when John Hynes says after the game directly, pointedly, that we made a conscious decision not to play the style, he's saying that they didn't want to put into the work. And we saw it with the top two lines. They just were willing to play East-West hockey, not dump pucks in. It's hard to chip and chase. It's hard. Nobody wants to do it. But at some point, you have to do it. And in a series where special teams has absolutely killed them, their power play, their number one unit had to be better. Like even Zuccarello said the day before when they scored 2 power play goals, he actually didn't think that their power play was very good. They just scored. And last night, their power play wasn't very good, and they definitely didn't score. And the Boldy thing, who had one of the worst games I think I've ever seen him play, that was the one that was just driving me crazy watching it from the press box. There was one power play, Anthony, where he 3 times turned the puck over at the offensive blue line, and then the 4th time tried to do it again and skated right into Brent Burns. And at some point, you have to realize that it's time to just go to work.
Yeah, and I think I'll be interested to hear Hynes' comments today because a lot of times, and we've seen it over the years, seen it in every sport really, the old cliche that you're never as bad as you thought you were, you're never as good as you thought you were after you go back and watch the film, the tape of the game.
Well, when you have 4 shots through 30 minutes, you're as bad.
Right. No, I agree. But I'm guessing that Hynes will say that, you know what, after I went back and watched it, it wasn't, last night, I think he was frustrated. And I agree with him that they weren't as difficult to play against, to use his terms that he uses so often during the year. But I really think that it was a lot more what Colorado was doing than it was what Minnesota was doing. I
don't disagree.
I think the Wild just got caught against a buzzsaw last night, a team that was they imposed their will in the offensive zone. They showed their speed, their skill. This is the best team in the NHL. They're the deepest forward group. You look at what they have down the middle compared to what the Wild iced down the middle last night without Eriksson Ek, and you look at a group of centers, Nathan McKinnon, Brock Nelson, Nazem Kadri, Nicholas Waugh, and then you take a look at Minnesota without Eriksson Ek, where you've got Ryan Hartman, then you've got Danila Yurov, who's in he's played his playoff career is 10 games long. You've got Michael McCarron and Nick Foligno, who are both really good role players, but they don't match up with what Colorado has down the middle in their lineup. And I think last night we saw that. And I think
can I just one thing, Anthony? Like, this is why I'm still not convinced that the Wild are just not going to trade Jesper Wallstedt this summer. The one area that we have seen here is like, look, this is a great team, maybe one of the top 5 teams in the NHL, but Colorado's centers are going nowhere. And the only way the Wild could go out and get a top center this offseason via trade would be using Wallstedt. It's not going to be Gustafsson. I'm not convinced that that's over with. I just think that this is an eye opener to them, that they've got to get, younger, faster, and one more player, especially when Eriksson Ek is proven again that he cannot be relied upon to be healthy at this time of year.
Well, I agree with that, and I think there's going to be plenty of time to talk about that. But I've felt all along like if the best way to pick up a top 6 forward is the trade market as opposed to free agent market, well, you have to give something to get something. And the number one asset the Wild have is 2 goaltenders that most teams would kill to have either one of them, especially at the contract levels where they are. But I think and I'll throw in just as a side note that Dallas's centers aren't going anywhere either. When you look at their team down the middle, I mean that's one of the spots where Minnesota is going to have to get better. But yes, these are 2 heavyweights in the NHL. They're 2 of the teams that were both in the top 8 during the regular season. They were in the top 5 most of the year. They're supposed to be in the final 8 teams as they are right here. But this is the level of competition that you face now when you get into the final 8. And, the Wild have been good enough to beat Colorado. Look, they played 4 times during the year and each team won twice. They've now played 8 times. Colorado's won 5, Minnesota's won 3. I mean, it isn't like you're light years away from them, but they showed last night that when they're on top of their game, they're the better team, especially when the Wild are without, in the one spot where Colorado has a significant edge is down the middle, and then you take away the Wild's best down the middle, that makes that gap even bigger. You throw Eriksson Ek back in the top 6, and that bumps Urov down into the bottom 6, and that bumps maybe McCarron down to the 4th line or something. I mean, now all of a sudden that gap isn't quite as big, but it's still a gap, and Colorado took advantage of it last night.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download Onyx Fish on the App Store or visit onyxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch.
Looking for a pouch that actually stands out? A lot of people I know are reaching for Lucy because it's built for pouch users who want something different. The flavor lasts, the pouch feels great, and it's completely tobacco-free. Lucy pouches come in strengths up to 12 milligrams and have a unique shape that makes them comfortable, easy to use throughout the day. If you want something even more unique, check out Lucy Breakers. They're nicotine pouches with a hydrating flavor capsule inside. Just crack it with your teeth for an instant burst of flavor that lasts. That's what makes Lucy different. Every other pouch feels the same, but Lucy Breakers are doing something no one else is, delivering the longest-lasting, on-demand flavor in pouches. And now Lucy is available in stores nationwide, so it's easier than ever to find. You can use the store locator at lucy.co/stores or get it delivered fast through apps like DoorDash and GoPuff. Lucy is the only pouch that delivers long-lasting, on-demand flavor. Get 20% off your first order when you buy it online at lucy.co/worstseats with the promo code worstseats. And you don't have to wait. Check out their store locator to find Lucy near you and grab it today. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Yeah, and look, Colorado, this is a shocking stat, by the way. They have not won a first-round series, I believe, at home in 18 years. Let me look this up again. Hang on. 2008. So, all right.
That was when they faced Minnesota, right? Didn't they win that
2008
series?
was the last time against the Wild that they won not a first round, a series that they closed a series at home. That's been 18 straight, by the way, that they have not closed a series at home. That is beyond bonkers.
Well, that's interesting.
Ain't over yet.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And now I think it's also, this is the first time the Wild have faced elimination in this playoff. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. I think there are a couple other things that I took away from last night's game. One is, I mentioned it on the pod after game 3, that I thought it was really underrated the way these two coaches were managing their rosters, managing their benches. And I think you have to give some credit to Jared Bednar last night. I think he did a much better job making sure that even on the road, knowing that Eriksson Ek was out of the lineup and that Minnesota's scoring at 5-on-5 was going to come from the Hartman-Zuccarello-Kaprizov line, they faced a steady diet of McCarron-Taves last night. I mean, I think it was 11 or 12 minutes that those guys faced each other on the ice last night. And when you're on the road and you still get that kind of matchup, that was a great job by Bednar to do that. Yeah. And I think, as I mentioned after game 3, he has a great feel for his team, just as Hynes does for the Wild, for when to plug lines differently with getting some of his superstars on the ice together, and he's got a few at his disposal. But you mentioned their role players who I thought were good last night, but he also had some spots where it was okay. Landeskog fitting well now with McKinnon and Natchez, but on this shift we're going to throw Nelson with Kadri together. There were just little things he did on key faceoffs, key shifts, where I thought he did a good job getting some of his big guns on the ice together when he had a feel for who was going and who was not.
I think one of the biggest things, and I still will contend till the day I die, that the biggest mistake the Wild made in this series was, if you were going to play Philip Gustafsson in game 2, you had to get him into game 1. They put him into no position to succeed in game 2, and series are too short to throw away games like that. I don't disagree with, all right, Jesper Wallstedt needed a reset, but then throw Gustafsson into game 1, just like Colorado did to Mackenzie Blackwood in game 3. Yeah. They got him playing time. He goes into yesterday's game. He wins his first start. The Wild, again, don't test him. They go 19 minutes at one point without a shot on goal. And I think that was a big mistake by the Wild this series.
Well, I think it was it's a little bit different though. So here's my theory on that. One is, I think it was great by Bednar to do what he did and get Blackwood in. When he did it, I really thought he was trying to protect Wedgwood, where it was 3-zip. He kind of sensed that this game wasn't going their way. It was unlikely they were going to come from behind to win anyway, and wanted to get him out of there so he didn't give up 6 and force his hand to go to Blackwood the next game. When he did it, I thought he was doing it to protect Wedgwood and that we'd see Wedgwood again the next game. The only thing I would say about John Hynes acting differently was that in that game, remember, Minnesota was never really out of it. They kept scoring enough to keep themselves in it. And I think that made it harder to make a goalie switch, because when Colorado jumped out, but then the Wild scored twice late in the first period to make it 3-2, if it had been 3-0 after 1, maybe then you go with the reset. Then Colorado got a couple more, but remember, Minnesota had taken a 5-4 lead in that game. So by the time it would have been like, okay, now it's time to get Wallstedt out of there, it was like a 6-5 game where you were still in it. The difference for Bednar was it was 3-zip. And it was, I don't want to say easier, because it's never an easy decision. But had Colorado been ahead 6-2 in game 1, I think you would have seen Hynes do exactly the same thing. It just was that the game was always close enough where he kept thinking, he's been our guy, he's been our guy.
Although both games at one point were 3-0. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but both games at one point were 3-0. And
right, but I'm saying if the first period of that game gets to it stays at 3-0, then maybe you're able to do that. But when the Wild got it to 3-2 and then came out and took the lead in the second period, it was hard then to pull your goaltender, when even though he had given up more than than Wedgwood had given up in game 3. You were in the game at that point. So it was a little tougher. But I think
because of that,
Bednar, to his
I
credit,
think you should. That's why I think then you go back to Wallstedt in game 2. What I'm saying is I don't think. Look, yesterday was Mackenzie Blackwood's first start in 27 days or something.
No, I know.
And Gustafsson, it was his first start in 22. I just think they didn't put him in a position to succeed. And so, I just think when you didn't pull Wallstedt in game 1, you had to come back with him in game 2.
Well,
he still had 3 days off after to get his mental reset.
I agree with that, but I'm not going to second guess Hynes on that call, because at the time I said the same thing. I said, your guy gave up 8. You have to, at that point, you owe it to the other goaltender to say, we've been telling you to stay ready, stay ready, stay ready. Well, the guy gave up 8, so you had to make the change then. I'm just saying it was more difficult for Hynes to get him some work late in the game before than it was for Bednar, because Bednar's team was down 3-0. But still, credit to Bednar for making that call. And there's some similarities. Remember when the Wild lost to St. Louis in the series when they were up 2-1? They went up 2-1, and Berube made the goalie switch to start game 4. And that was that night in St. Louis where the Wild had him on the ropes. All the defensemen were out for the Blues. Berube changed his lineup, he changed his goaltender, and he changed the series. And I thought he did it more quickly and more effectively than the Wild, because remember, then the Wild lost that game, and this was the series where they had made the decision to go Fleury instead of Talbot. And to me, he made the aggressive goalie change that the Wild waited 1 game too long, and they didn't go to Talbot. But I'm saying that at that point, they would have. I would have, after losing game 4, I'd have made the change then. Yeah. They waited till after game 5 and then threw Talbot into game 6 when he hadn't played in 3 weeks, and now you're going to ask him in a do-or-die game. So it was similar, where the opposing coach made a more aggressive goalie change, and he made it a game or 2 earlier than the Wild did.
Yep. Let's talk about the Michael McCarron incident with Josh Manson. Anthony, first of all, 4 times since 2000, this call has been made. So I had no idea that when you call a butt-ending major that you could downgrade it to a double minor for just a, quote, attempt. So in other words, so they don't see what they don't know what happened, but McCarron gets up and he's angry because he says he was butt-ended. They gather. I don't think any official saw it. I think you'd agree with that. So they call a major, they review it, and then they downgrade the major to a double minor because they couldn't prove conclusively on video evidence that this butt end landed. But you can still call a double minor butt end for just attempting the butt end, which I didn't even know was a rule, but that's what they downgraded. So when Dave Jackson put that out there, I tweeted that is the right interpretation because I had never heard it, and he sent me the rule 58-2. That is intent. After the game, Josh Manson admits that he butt-ended him in the neck. Jared Bednar admitted it as well. So technically, by that standard, it should have been a major. Now they didn't see it on video review. But here's the thing that I think. I think because of the way he reacted, I think that they felt he embellished. And because of his you and I have talked about this 1,000 times, and I tweeted it at the time when Michael McCarron was still a member of the Nashville Predators, and he gets a love tap from Zuccarello on the pant. He acts like he is absolutely shot in the knee. He goes off the ice. They call a major. They stop the game for 5 minutes. They review it, and then he has to come back because he faked it. And I think that these guys get branded. That was such an embarrassing display by him that the referees know this stuff. And I think that he said that Josh Manson has a history of being dirty. I think he has a history of being an embellisher. And I think that that's why they just weren't convinced that thing ever landed, but they saw the attempt and they downgraded to the double minor. The other thing that happened this series is after game 2, on the record in the locker room, Michael McCarron said that maybe they need to start embellishing and snap their head back the way that he said that Colorado was. You cannot tell me that referees don't hear this stuff, that the supervisor of officials aren't telling the referees this stuff, because it's different crews from game to game. And I just think that Michael McCarron, you and I have talked to all the time that the way to stop divers is to not give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think that he has been branded here as an embellisher.
Yeah, perhaps. And so there's a lot there. One, when I saw the play live, I thought it was a dive. I thought I thought it was an embellishment from the start. Now, the second part is, and I couldn't agree more, and it's similar to the play we talked about in the Anaheim-Edmonton series with the goal that was over the line. There is no chance that any referee on the ice saw this. The guy that was 4 feet away didn't even call a penalty. And I think because what he saw was what I saw, which was it looked like Manson tried to punch him in the head, and then McCarron made it look like he had been shot in the cheek. And so I think the guy standing 4 feet away doesn't even call a penalty. Then he goes and talks to referees that there is no chance that any of the other officials had a better look at it than he did. He was 4 feet away. But after all of that, they decide, well, let's call it a major so we can look at it. Now, the truth is, if none of them saw it, how in the world do you call a major in the first place? None of them saw it. There is no chance. You'll never convince me that any of them saw the butt end of his stick hit McCarron in the face. Because if they had, they'd have called it a major immediately. There wouldn't have required a conference between them. So they call the major. I was aware of the rule of an attempted butt end, but I think to me, this looked like Manson was trying to punch him in the head and happened to catch him with the stick instead. So I guess by definition, you could say that, well, he did hit him with the butt end. To me, it seemed like maybe you could come up with the attempted butt end. I don't know if it was because of McCarron's reputation as embellisher, but I hope that those things, I'm not saying this isn't a shot at Michael McCarron, but I've always said, I hope that guys who have a reputation of flopping stop getting the benefit of the doubt on calls. Maybe that's what happened here. I don't know. But to me, it looked like the guy standing right on top of it thought he saw a pile up on the ice and a guy take a little half-hearted punch at his face. If he happened to get him with the stick, maybe I'm missing it there, but I didn't think it was worthy of a major penalty.
Yeah, it looked to me like he got him like right around here with the stick. And Michael did after the game have a little had what to look to me because I was on that.
I think on the replay it does appear that he makes contact with the stick. I'm just saying that there's no chance any of the officials saw that. It was such a tight area. It was such a small. It wasn't like a big wind up swing with the butt end of a stick. I just don't believe they saw it. And in the end, maybe they got it right. On one hand, I think the Wild are fortunate that they even took a look at it on review, because if they had just gone with what any of them actually saw, none of them could have called a penalty.
Well, you and I have talked about this before. Like originally when they put in the review for majors, it was the interpretation that I got, because I was at that GM's meeting, was that you couldn't, as referees, if you didn't see something, just call a major to review it.
Right.
And because that's kind of the point I'm making. So many times, not only do they call the major, but they don't even know sometimes who did it. And they do it just to give themselves the opportunity to look. That is not what the purpose of this rule was.
Right.
It was to call a major and then review it to see if you got it right there, but not that to just make it up.
Right.
And they essentially called this major 100% because Michael McCarron was going nuts that he said that he was butt-ended.
Right, and that's kind of the point I'm making is that none of them saw it. You'll never convince me that any of them saw a major on the ice. And if they would have, the guy, Trevor Hansen's the ref right 4 feet away. His arm would have at least gone up or a signal of some kind to say that's a major. There's no chance the guys on the other side of the ice saw this as a major for butt ending. So I couldn't agree with you more. And maybe they need to change what the philosophy of it is and just say, hey, we didn't see it, so we're going to look at it on tape. But that opens the door, obviously, for so many plays where you'd have coaches asking, hey, go take a look at
more
that.
And more.
We have. And it is kind of a double-edged sword, because if you open that door and say, look, let's just make sure we got it right. Think of the number of plays over the course of a game where a coach could be saying, hey, my guy says he got hit in the mouth. Can you go look at this? And you could have conceivably endless video reviews over plays that wouldn't otherwise have been called. And I don't want to see that. But I wish referees would just be, look, if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. So don't just call a major for the sake of protecting, to say, hey, we want to go look at it on camera. I agree completely with the spirit of why the rule was in. We heard the same thing when we went to the league meetings and got the rules presented to us. And And I think you're right, that this was not the spirit of the rule, was to just call a major so you can review it. Hi, this is Anthony LaPanta. I recently made my first visit ever to a stretch lab. I stopped at the location out in Maple Grove and had a great stretch practitioner named Tom, who was terrific. I can't wait to get back. As you try to fight the aging process, which I'm right there with you, trying to battle it, flexibility is one of the big keys. I felt great after my first stretch, and I'm planning to go back weekly. There are 10 locations all across the Twin Cities. I highly recommend checking out Stretch Lab.
You've heard me for years talk about my Connecticut water treatment system in my house. Well, many homeowners don't realize how much hard or poor quality water affects your daily life. Issues include cloudy water, bad taste, buildup on fixtures, dry skin, appliance wear, everything. Well, I have your solution, and it's Aquarius Home Services. They are your authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Connecticut systems provide worry-free water throughout your entire home. Systems right now start at $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. It's $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. Their technicians will come to your home and provide a free in-home water quality testing analysis. Aquarius handles everything from your testing to your installation. One call and your problem is solved. You can enjoy spotless dishes, softer clothes, smoother, softer skin and hair, worry-free drinking water right from your faucet. That means no more plastic water bottles, no more water cans, everything. You'll be surprised also how little salt it uses. Visit right now or book your services at AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com, earning the right to be recommended. That's Aquarius Home Services. And don't forget to tell them that Russo sent you.
Life comes with a lot of things to remember, and Great Clips doesn't think your haircut should be one of them. That's why they use clip notes to save your haircut details, so no matter which stylist you see or Great Clips salon you visit, it's easy to feel like the best version of you. So do yourself a favor. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to a great haircut every time. Download the app today. Great Clips. It's going to be great.
The one thing I will say, and look, you know, I mean, I don't like to brand anybody as an embellisher, but Michael McCarron better be careful, because he is getting branded. Like, you could see on the review on the Jumbotron when Trevor Hansen and the ref and Jean Hebert are looking at that ref at the end. Trevor Hansen was almost pinned by why he was watching, because I think that he realized, you know what, there's no major here, but now because I called the major to review it, I got to downgrade this thing to a double minor, because we saw in their eyes, an attempt to butt end. And I think that they both thought that Michael McCarron put on an act there, acting like he was shot. And look, you know, this is what happens when you've done this in the past. Maybe he was really just unbelievably stung by this butt end, and maybe it's unfair for us to talk this way, but when you've had a history now of doing this, and when you say after game 2 on the record that we have to start snapping our heads back like Colorado, I just think that that's what happened in this situation.
I agree with all that, and I wouldn't have been shocked if they had come out and said, hey, it's a double minor for the attempted butt end, and it's a minor for embellishment against McCarron. The only thing I'll say, and I learned a lesson on this, because there are so many times when you watch a game where a guy will get hit with a stick and their head will snap back, and it always looks like they're reacting more to make sure an official knows they got hit. But the occurrence in a rink that made me think otherwise? It was when Ryan Carter was between the benches and he caught a stick in the face, and his head snapped back when he caught this stick in the face. And I remember asking about it after the game, and he was like, yeah, I mean, when it hits you, that's your reaction. And I thought, he wasn't trying to draw a penalty. He was between the benches with a headset on.
He's just soft. He's a soft color analyst.
But the way his head snapped back, it gave me a lot more sympathy for guys that get hit because of the way his head snapped back. I thought, okay, if that's just natural, like you get hit and your head reacts that way, now I don't question guys as much when it looks like what always I used to think was just a guy, I'm going to make damn sure that official knows that stick hit me in the chin. It's just a reaction when you get hit. The guys like you and me who haven't played the game and I guess I have gotten hit in the head with a stick before, but only playing street hockey, and I don't recall if I snapped my head back or not. But anyway, my point is simply that when we haven't been in those battles, that maybe it's unfair to say what we think is embellishment compared to what guys who actually have been hit in the face with a stick might think.
Yeah, neither of us have been hit with a butt end, although, man, there's so many days I wish I could hit you in the head with a butt end. It'd be so fun.
Yeah.
It really
Get
would be.
yourself a stress puck and call it good.
Yeah, I got one right over here. I
Yeah.
don't know where it is. I'll find it
I
somewhere.
might be flexible enough to avoid it because I did go back to Stretch Lab yesterday, so now I'm a little more mobile. I might be able to avoid your butt end.
Nice. By the way, I got to shout out a guy named Andy who I met at I think it's Purelina, the kind of Chipotle-like restaurant in Minneapolis yesterday. I'm online with the guy, huge Wild fan, and I ordered myself a salad. And next thing I know, he paid for my salad. So I appreciate it, Andy, if you're watching. Anything else, Anthony, before we talk about this? As we said, even though this has been a somewhat pessimistic podcast, it is unbelievable that Colorado has not closed out a series at home since 2008, since beating the Wild, the Northwest Division champion Wild, I might add,
Right.
in Game 1. That was the series, God rest his soul, that I predicted that the Wild would lose in 6 games. And Pavel Demitra went crazy on me in the locker room before Game 1, made an absolute scene. And after they lost in 6, I just went up to him and I'm like, "Avs in 6."
I bet he appreciated that.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
No, I mean, I think this is going to be a challenge. And coming into the series, we knew it was going to be a challenge. And you knew these 2 games at home that, we had talked before Game 3, and I kind of felt like maybe the easier game for the Wild to win would be because of the crowd atmosphere in the first home game, and that they were then going to face a more spirited, more concerned, concerted, desperate type effort from Colorado in Game 4, and the Wild got it. But now you got to go win a game in Denver. I mean, and it really has to be that simple. And the old saying in the playoffs is that one of the biggest challenges is to make sure you remember that each game is just one game. It doesn't carry over into the next. But this is a must win. It's an overused phrase in hockey that is now reality. The Wild have to win this game in Denver. So now it's on their stars to prove that you are at the same level as the superstars for Colorado. This is a game where Quinn Hughes and Brock Faber have to be outstanding. It's a game where Boldy and Kaprizov have to be able to generate 5-on-5. And you're the superstars. Their superstars were great in Game 4. You now have to be great in Game 5. Find a way to win a game in Denver, and then you never know, because momentum is a crazy thing. I think I was talking to Margo about this when I got home last night, and even within a game, Wild were up 1-0 after 1 last night, and I was kind of milling around the press box talking to a few scouts, some other media members, and they're like, "Oh, the Wild are going to win this series. They're going to win." And I was like, "Geez, I mean, they're up 1 in a period where they got thoroughly outplayed. This isn't
Why don't you
over
just
yet."
say Mike Gensel said that to you?
Well, Mike Gensel was one of the guys who said that to me, but there were some others too, and I was like, "Look, this isn't even 2-2 yet in this series, and there's a pretty good chance it's going to be 3-1 Colorado by the end of this game." And but it's amazing how fast things can change, and that's the nature of playoff series. So if you go to Denver and win a game, and all of a sudden the Wild come home with a chance to play in front of the home fans again, you just never know how fast things can come unraveled in a playoff series. But the focus has to be to get back. The Wild have to play Game 5 like they played Game 3. And if they play it any other way, it's going to be tough to beat this team.
Does Margo watch the games when you're not calling them, by the way?
She does, but I don't get nearly as many texts throughout because I don't think it matters as much to her what the broadcaster says.
That's funny.
No, but she watches them, just not the stress level is a lot higher when I'm calling the game, and I think she's a little more invested into it, because I texted her a couple times last night, like, "Hey, what do you think?" And we're normally like, as soon as something happens, I'll get a text with either asking me if I was sure about what I said or what I thought about a play or something like that. And I'm in kind of the same boat right now. It is a really strange feeling, and it's been 11 years since I've watched games that mattered this much at the end of a season without and I guess even then I was doing the pre and post game shows, so I was still a little more diving into the specifics and the numbers and the matchups and everything. But it is such a strange feeling to sit in the arena and watch the games and not be calling the play-by-play at this point in the season. And I know we get it during the regular season when national TV takes games, but it's different when the games mean this much. It's just such a everybody else in there is doing the exact same job they always do. You are, the scouts are, the radio guys are. For them, these games are the same thing they do every night. And for me, it's totally different. And that's a strange feeling.
Yeah, that sucks. Well, what are you doing today? Like I'm flying. Well, see, by the way, so the Wild have availability at the airport at 1:00. So we'll see if Eriksson Ek's on the plane. I just, even if he is, like, I just don't know how effective he could be. Like, this is an injury that even if he plays games 5 to save their season, how's he going to play game 6? I just don't get it. I don't see how he's gonna. But what are you doing today? I'm flying to Denver.
Yeah, I don't have a flight to Denver, unfortunately. I'd love to be heading to the Mile High City, but I've got a veterinarian trip for Stanley to try and figure out. He's got some issues going on, so we're going to the vet.
Mm.
Then I got a golf match at the Royal Club today that I'm really excited about. I haven't played there yet this year, so big golf match this afternoon. And then probably sitting on the couch with dinner watching some playoff hockey, which is what I do every night these days.
Yeah, I'm sure Stanley's really excited that after his veterinary appointment that you've already has a golf game. I'm sure Margot's,
actually, it's Margot that's more excited about that because she's the one who gets to come home and take care of it. He's dealing with some stuff right now that we have to deal with when we get back from our Greece and Italy trip, but we're just trying to kind of get him through between now and then.
Yeah, well, hopefully everything's okay. I love that dog.
Yeah,
all right, cool. I'm going to Denver. Yeah, actually, you want to hear a funny thing that this is so Michael Russo right here, okay? My friend asked me the other day, asked me if my flight back to Denver was packed. And I just instinctively, it came out the most pompous way ever. I just go, I don't know. I didn't look behind me.
That's shocking.
Yeah. And
that's like when my kids walked by you on the plane and they said you didn't even look up from your seat in first class while you're staring at your phone, and my kids were on the same flight as you.
Yeah, that's
They're
true.
back in the nameless hordes back in Peasantville. Those people don't matter to you.
I did at one point look behind me and saw Joe Smith, so that made me happy. So, thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, Great Clips, Stretch Labs, and Lucy nicotine pouches. Talk to everybody after Game 5.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world